Hello, and welcome to More Intelligent Tomorrow, a wide-ranging exploration of the potential impact of AI on the world around us, as envisioned by the future heroes of the human and machine intelligence revolution. Can AI predict our attention? We'll discuss this and more with Ricky Ray Butler on today's episode. And now, your host, Ben Taylor.
Ricky Butler, thanks for being on the podcast.
I'd like to cut.
Oh my
You
gosh.
need to call me Ricky Ray Butler.
Okay, we're going to
Or
keep
Ricky
going.
Ray.
Ricky Ray Butler, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, is there no intro here?
Hey, I'm not going to read some
demand an
bio.
introduction.
That's the point of the podcast. I'm not going to read
Okay,
some
okay.
bio.
Let's start over.
Ricky Ray Butler, thanks for being on the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. I'm so pumped to be here. We've been wanting to do this for a long time.
Well, I'm really excited to have you on because you have a very unique lens and perspective with your experience with influencers and that story. So I'd love to jump all the way back to the Plaid days. Was that the name of your first company? What?
Yeah, it was called Plaid Social Labs.
And is it true that when you were starting out, it was actually difficult to convince companies that some zit-faced teenager should talk about them? Is that true?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. When we first started out, I remember just noticing for the first time all these YouTubers, and this is where a lot of these content creators and influencers were. They were first YouTubers, and they all had very raw content. It was very unprofessional and unorthodox to when people were creating video. And I remember just thinking, wow, what would happen if we were to start working with a lot of these different YouTubers and get them to talk about a product. And as we started testing that, we ended up like crashing websites or spending like $1,500 on a creator and making $40,000. It was amazing. And so we thought we'd just cracked this nut, and we found this gold mine, and we then go to agencies or different big brands, and we would literally get laughed out of rooms because they'd be saying, well, look, this is really crappy content. We don't want to be affiliated with this. It's way too raw and organic. And, we tried to explain that, the data-driven approach is to go, where the viewers are, and that this was exploding. And it was a tough hill to climb at the very beginning.
And do you think this is just the growing pain of ramping onto new media where some companies are nervous and scared and they're not familiar with it? Is this just part of the transition and the growing pain of considering 100%. These new technologies?
Well, so right now, all brands work with influencers, but it's more of a check off the list. So, okay, we did an influencer campaign. Awesome. And that is also how it's working with product placement. Most brands realize that there needs to be some form of product placement, but they do it in a very simple, basic way, and it's a check off the list. But things are changing so fast, and brands are just starting to realize now that they need to become much more sophisticated. And let me explain why. Ad exhaustion is at an all-time high. 86% of Americans are skipping advertisements. 47% of the globe have an ad blocker technology that they're using. And I think that's actually very conservative when it comes to more developed countries like the US or like Japan. And then, if you look at Netflix on its own is bigger than the top 4 cable networks combined. That's just Netflix. And Amazon Prime is also bigger than all of them combined. But then if you then turn over to YouTube, 88% of the views on YouTube come from influencers, from YouTubers. And that dwarfs all the streaming platforms, from Netflix to Amazon to Hulu to all linear television and all of TV combined. All that combined is a small fraction of what YouTube is. And that's not including the crazy amounts of growth that's happening with TikTok, what's happening on Instagram, what's happening on Twitch.tv, and then all the different platforms that are starting to come to the West from the East.
And one of the risks with this new economy is fraud, right? So like I bought all of my LinkedIn followers and other people do that too.
You pay for your followers?
No, I didn't. I just shitting you.
No, this is what's funny. Well, it's not funny. It's actually something that we should all be aware of. This year, $1.3 billion will be wasted on fraudulent activity on fake followers.
Really? So people just buying Instagram followers will mislead brands?
Yeah, yeah, and so that's actually one of the areas that we've had to prioritize, where we can see, okay, out of all these different creators, a lot of them look healthy. They have millions of followers, and some of them even have a lot of engagement. But the truth is, a lot of this engagement can be fake, and a lot of those followers, can be fake, or they can be bots. And so utilizing AI to be able to look, you know, at thousands of different influencers, and to look at their followings, and to be able to see, okay, this creator has a really high bot percentage when it comes to the engagement, or this creator over here has a very low bot percentage. You should prioritize them and make sure that you have budget for that creator specifically. There's actually an example where there was a creator that got a lot of negative press over a year ago, where she did a collaboration with a clothing company, a partnership with a T-shirt, and she had over 2 million followers, and she was only able to sell 30 T-shirts. And there's all this negative press, all this controversy, and all these different reporters were out there saying influencer marketing is dead. You should not work with influencers. Well, that was generalizing millions and millions of influencers based off of one specific project. If that brand would have come to us, we could have immediately told them that 25% of her engagement is fake. We could have also told them that her views on Instagram stories are very low. And having that many followers and having that much bot activity, as well as that low of engagement, is a sign that you should not put all of your eggs in one basket, and that you should work with other creators that are out there.
Describe an influencer 10 years from now with AI, with where things are going. If you had to go that far in the future, what's a day in the life of an influencer with these types of technologies coming online?
You know what? There's a reason why we're being very influencer and creator centric, because they are going to be what's valuable to platforms. And a lot of these creators are probably going to have their own platforms, where they're going to have they'll still leverage other platforms 10 years from now, but there's a good chance that they'll have their own platforms where they can own their audience, own their data, and do things that is a positive impact to their communities. I think that's something that's very possible, and that's why we've set up our business the way we have. We help brands work with creators, but we make sure that they reach a consensus. We want to make sure that brands are empowered, but also the creators are empowered. And in a world of friction, it's nice to have a culture and an approach of consensus, where we're all aligned and are all on the same page. And so today, I mentioned that we work with a lot of different producers and content across all the streaming platforms. Guess how many of those deals we've done through those streaming platforms? Zero. These deals and these collaborations are happening directly through the creators. And so we're going to see the creators get more influence and more empowerment over time. And good signs of this are, the creators like Ninja or other, content and influencers out there, where the platforms are bidding against each other to make sure that influencer can be exclusive to their platform. Well, we've also saw this with Dave Chappelle and Netflix. Dave Chappelle was very frustrated that Viacom and CBS sold the rights. That Netflix bought the rights to stream the Dave Chappelle show from Viacom and CBS. And who knows how much money went into being able to have the rights to stream that content. Well, Dave Chappelle didn't feel like the agreement he had with Viacom and CBS was that good of an agreement. And even though he agreed to something, later on in his life, he realized that it wasn't something that he felt like was fair to him. And he obviously wasn't making money here. So Dave Chappelle went to Netflix and said, hey, I understand they have a deal, with the Dave Chappelle show. I understand that you did this with Viacom, CBS. You don't have to do anything, but I ask you that you take it down because it hurts my feelings. What happened? Netflix took it down. Why? Well, They probably have data showing that Dave Chappelle doing stand-up comedy is one of the top performing forms of content that they have. That's probably a piece of it. Also, if they make Dave Chappelle more empowered and they build that relationship with Dave Chappelle, maybe they can create their own Dave Chappelle show or something similar to that in the future. It also says something very boldly and positively, to the creator community and all the influencers, celebrities, content creators, and producers that are out there, that Netflix is behind the content creator. And so this is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg. That shows that someone that might be seen as a stand-up comic or an actor, it shows that they now have more clout than ever before. I think this is a part of the decentralization that we're seeing, and all these platforms are going to realize it's the content creators that make them valuable, and they're going to cater to the content creators. And some of these content creators are going to break through that and even create their own platforms that are successful.
Do you think AI will get to the point that we'll have AI influencers like deep fakes or Instagram influencers where it's just algorithms entertaining us? Are we ever going to get there?
I'd love to hear, you're a futurist, and I'd like to hear your thinking. From your questions, it shows how futuristic you are, and you have a lot of futuristic thinking. To answer you, there's influencers out there today that claim that they're AI influencers. I don't know how real that is. I think they're just animated. And the word AI is kind of a stretch, but I do believe it can get to the point where AI is going to be able to edit, which it's doing that in some form or another in certain platforms and different applications. But I do think it's possible that there'll be a point where there are creators that create content and will be able to use bio data to be able to see how people respond to that content, both when it comes to comments, but visually see if they're laughing, or if they're crying, or if they're excited, or if they're not. And there's ways of doing this with eye tracking technology. You can also do this with brainwave technology. I think it could get to the point if people authorize it because they want something very personified to them, that AI can both create. I mean, there can be creators that are built off of AI, and there's a feedback loop that makes it so they continue to grow and they continue to progress. But I think it's also possible to do it in a way where people can have personalized experiences based on how they're reacting to the content. Ben, have you seen Bandersnatch on Netflix?
Maybe, I can't remember.
So it's a choose your own adventure show.
Oh, wait, no, they die in that show, right? Like the adventures are messed up, right?
Yeah, there's different adventures you can go, and I am not going to spill the beans of what happened in the show. But there's even a time where they let you choose which cereal box they should eat from. Well, I think it'd be amazing if we can get to the point, and this is leveling up technology at a whole other level. Maybe AGI needs to be in existence here, because you're the expert way more than I am. I'm not an expert. I'm a big picture visionary thinking kind of person. I'm not as technical as you are. But what if you could watch a program, and then based on how you're reacting to the program, it changes the content based on how you're reacting. So if you're laughing, it takes you down a certain path. If you're frowning, it takes you to a different path. If you seem sad, it does something else to maybe takes you to a path that's more positive, that cheers you up. Do you think content can get to that point where it can be more personified in real time?
I think it definitely can. We're seeing some evidence with the GANs, the generative adversarial networks. People see the fake faces and they think that's cool, but they also do fake scenes, fake animations. They look really crude, like someone's golfing kind of, or they're swimming kind of. But you can probably, to pull on that thread, I always like making things really dark. So to take that to a really dark place, you could imagine in the future, you would be entertained like with a horror movie. And if you're not scared, you're going to be. And that feedback is coming. That feedback would be coming from your cradle cap or your skin sensitivity, where your phobias are going to be different than mine. And that actually gets really scary because we don't understand what happens when you cross those thresholds. AI could actually optimize to the point where you don't come back. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, amazing for good or bad.
That's a great way to look at it. Well, what do you think about the question of AI creating influencers? I mean, them being able to, having AI create an influencer and then have a feedback loop based on how people react to the influencer. That's something I think might happen sooner than later.
Yeah, I think we're looking at, if it's not this year, during the next 3 to 5 years for sure, one of the LinkedIn top voices will be an AI. And it'll be a big embarrassment for LinkedIn.
Well, do you think it's because it's going to have an advantage of aggregating data and information and to deliver in a way that humans just can't compete with?
Yeah, because one of the issues that influencers run into, I'm not familiar with other platforms that you are, but on LinkedIn, they can't post enough. So if I could post 20 times per day, that'd be better than 3, but I can't do that and come up with creative content. So AI, it it has a huge advantage because it can steal. It can see what's working, it can aggregate, and it can steal from thousands of text-based influencers. And what's the feel-good content they're writing, and it can test it through smaller AI. So you can imagine if I had one fake LinkedIn account, I could have 50 smaller ones where it's testing. And then when it finds the good stuff, it pushes it through the main channels.
This is engaging. Let's push it through here.
Yeah.
That makes complete sense. To be honest, when we talk to, when we talk about our bot detection and us being able to see, what percentage of views or engagements are fake when we're working with influencers, we kind of position it as like a Terminator war, like, a cyborg war between us and all the bots that are out there, because we're noticing that more and more bots are acting more and more like humans.
Man, there's one more question I really wanted to ask you. Oh, so this podcast is called The More Intelligent Tomorrow. We like to think about the future. What are you the most excited about in the future? And it doesn't have to be related to your company or the work and stuff you're doing. Just selfishly, what are you as an individual excited about in the future?
I'm really excited to see what happens with live streaming, because I think that is going to be the next era of decentralization. I'm excited to see all the other platforms that are planning on coming in and competing and seeing how well they do. But I'm really excited to get to the point where the content creator truly is the master of their own destiny, where influencers and producers and filmmakers can truly decide what they want to do and make it happen and have no form of barrier in their way. And I think those days are coming, and I think they're coming really quickly. And just now, content creators are realizing the influence that they have. I mean, there are influencers that launch products and make $100 million within the 24 hours. I mean, that has happened. That happened with Jeffree Star and Shane Dawson. And so this is still very new. And it's been exciting to see that actors are now realizing that, you know what, they maybe need to become their own production companies. They need to become their own studios. And I think we're going to be seeing not just a decentralization of content, but there's going to be a huge decentralization of platforms. And it's going to be because it's going to show how different we all are, and how, we're going to support whatever communicates best to us. And so I think that's something that's going to be really, really exciting. I'm also excited to see if elements of the cyborg theory takes place, where you see things like IntelliLink and other, inventions that are starting to happen, to see, where that goes. Is it possible for us to be way more productive with technology attached to our brain? I don't know, but I'm excited to see what happens.
We'll watch more cat videos with our neural links.
Yeah.
while we drool and look at ads. Well, I knew if I made you cry, you'd give me a wedgie, or you'd bully me somehow if I saw you in person. So you intimidated me.
No, I think you're the bully. But anyways, thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.